All right. I believe we're live, but we're going to give this a second here and let everybody jump in here. So just give it a second. I'm going to pop over here on Facebook, refresh, and might edit this post, make sure that it's what we want. What's going on, everybody? I know that we're just starting out here. So as you're coming in, take a seat, grab a coffee. I know it's early on the West Coast, other parts, whatever it is. Make sure you comment. Let us know where you're coming in from. I am going to set this up here. So give us 2 seconds and we'll get going here.
So Jared, how many folks do you usually have in the audience for one of these?
Oh God, I don't want to scare you.
Okay.
It's,
listen, all I know is my buddy Gary Regis from Michigan. He'll be watching because he sent me a text. So
well, that's at least one. There you
that's
go.
At least one.
Yeah, that's at least one. Okay, so I'll tell you what we have actually, because in StreamYard here, it'll actually show us what we've got here. So go ahead, guys, keep on coming in here. Let us know where you're coming in from. We're looking forward to having this conversation. I'm super appreciative to Kevin for being willing to do this. And so we'll get you guys some clarity. We'll get some questions answered. I did one with Nick Bailey last weekend, and we had on live as far as people on at one time. I think we were at 3,500, whatever, and then it was at the end, it was like 25,000, and now it's blown up because it goes to our group, it goes to my personal profile, it goes to my fan page, it goes. But then what happens is we take clips, we'll put it on Instagram as like my biggest platform, and that'll get hundreds of thousands, million, like whatever. But either way, there'll be some people on. So it's growing right now. We're about to cross the 1,000 lives. So just keep on coming in, guys. We'll give it one more minute here. We're going to get going. Kevin, where are you right now? You're in Chicago?
I'm in Chicago, yeah. Yep.
Nice. Anything going on? You're just relaxing, or anything going on right now?
Yeah, had a meeting yesterday. We invited in the big brokers, the ones who unfortunately were carved out of the settlement, and had a 4.5-hour conversation with them. Answered as many of the questions as we could, and I just thank them. I thank them for being there, for giving us the opportunity to have the conversation. And while I don't think they necessarily were satisfied with all of the answers, they at least were given the opportunity to ask them and to get some guidance from us as to how they might want to approach the settlement and for their companies.
Well, you're in a fun position right now, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is because I've gotten so many different mixed emotions and messages from people, and I think they need to understand that like you're one of us, like you're a broker, like you are, and I think sometimes people maybe they're just so busy with their businesses they don't realize that. And so I said to you, and I'll just say frankly in front of everybody right now, I think it's good that they're going to be able to hear from you and hear some answers and some questions and whatever, where there's no teleprompter, there's no elevator music going, there's no whatever. This is just like Kevin talking to you saying, here's what I can say, here's what I can't say, like, that kind of stuff. So I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you being willing to do that. We talked last weekend. I was at my son's soccer tournament. I don't know if you were home or what you were doing. But I appreciated your willingness and you wanting to talk to the members. And so that I thought was a really good thing. So thank you, man.
Yeah, no, Jared, thank you. And just to your point, for the folks that are watching this live and will watch this on your podcast, I'm a realtor just like each of you. I wake up unemployed every day, and on a daily basis, I'm working with buyers, sellers, tenants, and landlords. And so I am a practitioner, broker, owner, a small independent company. My father started it over 50 years ago. And my brother and I and my brother-in-law, we're second generation running the business. We do residential sales and property management. So that's how I earn a living.
Yeah, man, I've known you guys. It's funny to say, but I've known you guys for decades now. I've known your brother for, that makes me feel really old, but that's crazy, man. I don't think either one of us had any grays back then, but either way, man, let's get this started. I want to say to everybody, welcome episode 100 of Today with Jared James. Obviously, I got a special guest today, NAR President Kevin Sears. I would love it for all of you that are tuning in right now. Do us a favor, because we want as many members as possible to hear what it is we have to say. So hit that share button. Make sure you like this. Leave a comment. Let us know where you're coming in from. I'm sure Kevin and other people, many are going to be seeing those comments and seeing where you guys are coming in from. So hit share. Let's get our colleagues involved here in what I think is a really important conversation. I'm going to have, by the way, for those of you that are students of ours and followers and otherwise, I've got an exciting announcement at the end. Kevin, when we're done, is going to go try to get some time with his family. He's obviously had a hectic schedule lately. And when he does that, I'm going to make a very special announcement that a lot of you have been asking. Where's the next advance? When is the advance? I've got those dates. We've got all of that stuff for you guys. And obviously, we have something to talk about now as far as from the perspective of training and being a pro versus an amateur and all of that stuff. So we'll have a very exciting announcement for you. I want to make sure that everybody understands that there's some items I may bring up. There's nothing that Kevin has said to me like, don't say that or don't bring that up. I want to make that very clear. I've also made it very clear to Kevin that if I ask him something and he's not allowed to because there's different legalities and whatever else, I am not here to put him in a position to, get in trouble or just tell me or just say it like, hey, I'm not allowed to. And I think that we all need to respect that. I've also said to Kevin, hey, let's do rapid fire. I want to get as many questions as possible here so we can get as much information to you guys as humanly possible. So you can kind of like really hear what's going on. And there's been a lot of misinformation. I know there's been the focus on the media, but there's been misinformation within our industry too, because in an effort to be first, a lot of times people aren't giving, the most accurate information. Okay. So with that being said, let's just get started. Kevin, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Yeah, man.
Happy to be here.
Hotel in Chicago?
Yes, sir.
Nice. Yeah, that was a beautiful. You sent me a pic this morning. That was a beautiful pic, man.
The river is still green.
Oh my God. All right, so let's get started, man. I mean, as you know, I think you've heard it, you've seen it, whether it's reality, not reality. A lot of members are disappointed. They're frustrated. Some of them are downright angry, and they feel that this whole thing is just a big money grab. You hear about, the average seller could potentially collect between $21 and $24, and yet the attorneys could collect upwards of over $100 million. NAR publicly stated to their membership for a while now that they were going to appeal, that they were going to fight. And many members felt that NAR was in the right, that actually made sense. So with that being said, why did NAR believe that this was the right thing to do? Why did they feel that a settlement was the right thing to do when what they were publicly saying was, we're going to keep fighting, why did they feel this was a good deal?
Yeah, so it's a great question. The reality is exactly what you said. We believe we would have won on appeal. But the issue is twofold. The first is, if we went on appeal, we're remanded back to the lower court, and we have to have another jury trial. And during that appeal period, which could be 18 to 24 months, all of the other copycat suits are going on. All the defendants in those suits are having legal expenses that they have to incur in order to do that. The second piece is, so there's liability for everyone and all the copycat suits. The second thing is, we would have had to post up to a $5.4 billion bond. Now, the judge could have said you can post a lower bond, but even if it was 20% of the $5.4 billion, we would not have had the financial wherewithal to post that bond. So in order for us to appeal, we would have had to file Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So that would stay all other cases for the National Association of Realtors only across the country. And so when we looked at it, the appeal, what I just said, bankruptcy, for us, that was just untenable, because what would happen with the bankruptcy is the judge would then say, okay, we're going to start peeling stuff off of the association to start preparing to pay the debt. And then the second thing is, what damage would that have done to the association, our reputation on Capitol Hill, on the state houses across the country, and City Hall? And so we need to be able to continue to operate the way that we have, providing the tools, resources, benefits, and advocacy that the members have come to expect. And what we feel with this settlement, while it's a tough pill to swallow, this is the best way for us to be able to move forward. And what I said earlier this week to about 1,000 members when we met on some political and government affairs meetings was, our future started last Friday.
Interesting. Okay, so it was almost, so what I'm hearing is it's almost like it's the best of bad options, meaning they litigated to the point where they made it financially unfeasible to do what would have been better options. And while the forward facing to the membership looks like that you sold us out, you really didn't have options other than bankruptcy or whatever, because they were litigating you to that. Is that correct?
And so here's the thing, Jared. It's, if you want to think about, we're negotiators. We're all negotiators for a living. That's what we do. And it's always best to negotiate from a position of strength, right? Well, October 31st, the plaintiffs and their attorney got a $5.4 billion verdict against us. That's a very strong position we have. They're on a fortified hill shooting down at us on the beach. And we're not in regular sand, we're in quicksand. And so, that's the, unfortunately, the best deal we were able to get. And at the end of the day, we were able to, in this settlement, protect well over 1 million of our members. With the other settlements that happened, it's well over 1.4 million members. There was a carve out for some co-defendants and Berkshire Hathaway, who are not part of the settlement. But we also are able to protect all of our local, state, territory associations, association-owned MLSs, and any brokerage that had a realtor member as a principal that had less than $2 billion in sales production in 2022.
Okay, we're gonna get to that. I want to know though. So this is a proposed settlement. Do you anticipate it being approved? And is there enough time? Because all we heard was that, these will probably go into effect mid-July. And yet when you look at the complexity, like I've read the settlement, like when you look at the complexity of it and you get attorneys involved, I see that going back and forth, months and months, which doesn't leave a lot of time to make any proposed changes if it is approved. Do you see it getting approved, and when do you see it getting approved? And I know that that's just guessing, but what is the hope?
Yeah, we expect that the preliminary, that the settlement will be filed with the judge, and we'll get preliminary approval within the next week or two. Once it's filed with the court, we have 120 days to implement our rules, the rule changes, and there are two of them. One is that we will be prohibiting the offers of compensation on the multiple listing service, the MLS, and the second is any subscriber of a realtor MLS must use a written agreement when representing a buyer. Now, the wording was very specific because there's some states where it's transactional brokerage, right? And so we were able to use the words very carefully, thinking about different state laws across the country. But those rules will go into effect mid-July. But the thing is that we'll be implementing the rules before we have final approval from the court. We expect that it's going to take probably at least 6 months to get final approval from the court.
And that's why I was asking, because that's what I was thinking. Like, it doesn't happen that quick.
No.
What about? I would assume that's going to bring on new forms, because that means new agreements. I mean, obviously, there's a big thing over buyer agency. We can get into that in a second. But like, are we anticipating new forms, new buyer agreements, new listing, like new forms, basically? Yes, no?
Yeah. So I mean, luckily, I know a lot of local and state associations already offer forms for their members. So there might have to be an update to the forms. Our legal counsel at the National Association of Realtors, they're there for the states and the locals if there's assistance that's needed. But really, it's all predicated on state law as to what needs to be in there. And so how will this impact some forms? There might be some changes that are coming down, but it's going to be, the state council for the association that really knows the law. And if there's any changes that need to be made, then that's what will happen. But listing agreements, listen, they're going to be, at least for me in Massachusetts, it clearly states on there what the full commission is that we're going to charge, and if we're going to offer cooperating compensation. So that can remain the same. And
can that remain? Because that seems to be a point of contention here, where that, like, when you looked at this suit and you went, okay, the seller can't pay the buyer. The seller never paid the buyer. The seller paid the listing agent, and there was a sub agreement there that said that they had the ability to pay a cooperating broker. That's why so many agents and brokers were upset with this, because they're going, we never had it going the other way. That can still be allowed.
Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. Right. So, yes, it can. And that's one of the things, what I'll tell you about this settlement that we had. And despite what others said, we met with the plaintiff's attorneys before the trial, during the trial, and obviously after the trial. We were open to settling the claims. But what the plaintiffs and their attorneys had said originally, it was very much like what the DOJ said in the Nozelak case in Massachusetts. They wanted to completely decouple the offers of compensation.
Correct.
So we fought for our membership and the consumers, saying, let the consumer decide how they want compensation to happen. So yes, in your listing agreement, you get to sit down with the Mr. and Mrs. Seller and say, here's the listing agreement. These are the services I'm going to provide. And if you want to offer compensation to a buyer's broker, then this is what it's going to be. And at the end of the day, I would much rather have a buyer broker on the other side of a transaction than an unrepresented buyer. It's unrepresented buyers. It's a recipe for
well, I
disaster.
get it. That's good. That's what we should. I get, like, nobody disagrees with that. But you're saying the way that listing agreements are currently formatted, they can still do it that way. Because honestly, like, that's been a big crux for everybody. Everybody's going, they don't pay the buyer, they pay the listing agent, and they co-op. You're saying that can still be allowed.
So I'm not an attorney. I only know the Massachusetts form. I know that it was, but so long as it's clearly spelled out in there what compensation is going to be paid and who it's going to be paid to, then yeah.
What about so under the new rules, under the new settlement, it says that obviously a buyer agency now has to be signed in order to show a home, and that it needs to be very clear on what that compensation is going to be. Under the new rules, if I've read it correctly, you cannot, whatever that compensation is that's being offered by the buyer, even if it's paid by the seller, if the seller is offering out compensation through co-op, through the listing agent, if that percentage they're offering is more than what you signed in a buyer agreement, under the new settlement, you cannot collect the additional amount. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, contracts are made to be amended. Is there any reason you can't go to your buyer agent when you make the offer, amend your buyer agreement, and say, we are now going from 2.5% to 3%. We are amending the agreement prior to making an offer. Any reason you can't do that?
I'm not an attorney. I'm not gonna get anywhere near that one, Jared.
Gotcha. But I'm just saying contracts are made to be amended.
Well, but what I will tell you is the settlement says that the contract needs to be signed before any showings.
Correct.
So
right, but all contracts are subject to the next signature that says this now supersedes anything that came. Anyway, we won't get into that. That'll be something that our industry, whatever. The number one thing I keep hearing from people right now is they are upset that the media broke the news to them before NAR did, and they are irate over the idea of how the media has been reporting on this settlement, which has nothing to do with what the settlement's actually about. And then their second level of irritation comes from the fact they feel like NAR is not getting out in front and doing interviews and talking to people and telling the truth and saying that's not what this is about. Does NAR have any plan of doing that, of getting out in front and speaking for the membership and stopping allowing this false narrative, this fake news to be spread to consumers, because it's making their lives more difficult to have to overcome this false narrative? Is there any plan by NAR to get ahead of that, or to get out in front, or to combat it?
So Jared, all I can say is we play by the rules. The settlement agreement was embargoed until 10 a.m. on Friday, March 15th. Obviously, somebody broke that and gave the story to the New York Times. The New York Times decided to, I don't know if it was just lazy journalism or joyful indifference, wrote the piece with so many inaccuracies. And then it was very, very disappointing the way that other media outlets said, well, if the New York Times printed it, it's got to be true. And they just ran with that story. And so what we've been doing is playing catch up. And some media outlets have been good in saying, okay, well, then what is the truth behind this settlement? Where are the inaccuracies and how can we report it? But, you know, we're playing catch up there. And, you know, it's really tough because we had an entire plan of cascaded out for how we were going to let the membership know, let the media know. And
somebody broke trust. Somebody leaked to the New York Times, broke the plan you guys had, and basically screwed everybody. And is that basically okay? That's cool. That's the answer to the question. That's what I wanted to know.
It's so unsatisfactory.
No, I get it, man. And like I said, it's the number one thing I'm getting from people.
And to the members, all I can do is say, I'm sorry, but you know, we're playing by the rules, and we're honoring the agreement as best we can. And one of the other things, and I hope that the members have been tuning in. I've been doing some on the road videos, just trying to give updates as we go. I did one earlier in the week that was released, I think, on Thursday, and I talked about the settlement and some political advocacy that we're doing. So I'm trying to communicate better.
Is there any plan to get someone into the media to go and like start doing interviews and saying that's not what this is about? That's not what this is. I mean,
yeah. What I'll tell you is,
sign me up. Like, get someone out there to say enough.
And Jared, if you're willing to do it, I'll let our team know. We've got media, we've got surrogates, ambassadors all around the country, and so we're asking them to contact their local media, because realtors have contacts in all the local communities, and to contact them, the media that they know, to try and get our story out. So the answer is yes.
It's infuriating, man. I came home a couple days ago, and my son had ABC on, and across the screen, end of real estate commissions. And I'm like, what? Like that, it's infuriating. And then you've got these people talking who know nothing about our industry. And because they're saying it on the news, it must be real. You would think by now people would realize that's the sign that it's not real. But anyway, let's move on, because I've got a lot of questions I want to ask you. Clear cooperation. Obviously, that's not mentioned in this. Does this do anything to the clear cooperation rules?
So what I'll tell you, Jared, is I've got so much going on right now. I can't answer that question. I think the clear cooperation issue is still trying to be resolved with the DOJ. So let me just talk with legal counsel at NAR, and I'll get you some more information on the impact on clear cooperation, and then you can share it with your audience.
I appreciate that. I just don't want to beforehand. If you're not 100% sure, just tell me, and we'll
I just don't want to say something and be wrong. So I'd rather just say, let me get the info, and then you can share it.
I appreciate that, man. On that same note, the DOJ. What role did the DOJ play in this settlement? And the reason I asked that is because we didn't hear anything about compensation being taken off the MLS. And then the DOJ comes out a few weeks ago and says, we want, compensation taken off the MLS. We want hourly wage, not percent. We want, and then all of a sudden this settlement comes and it's compensation off the MLS. And it was like, whoa, where did that come from? Did they play any role in this? Or is that, again, something we're not allowed to really?
So what I'll tell you is, and I got in a little trouble for something I said in January about the Department of Justice, but they have for years have been telling us verbally they want commissions completely decoupled. It wasn't until the Nozlak case in Massachusetts, MLS PIN case, that they finally put in writing exactly what they wanted. And once we had something in writing from the DOJ, then we knew where we were at. And so the fact that the Department of Justice wanted the commissions completely decoupled, and we were able to still save through our settlement that offers of compensation can be made, just not on the MLS. As sour as that win is, it is a win for us.
Kevin, on that same note, the other thing they wanted, which is a big deal, I read about this, they wanted to go to an hourly wage, which you want to talk about completely. Think about our industry with an hourly wage. Like, if people are annoyed by commissions now, imagine showing properties for 11 months. They don't buy the property and you send them an invoice for $32,000. Imagine the lawsuits that come from brokers to consumer. Imagine what this industry looks like if now there's an incentive for the agents to prolong the transaction. They don't want you to get the offer. They want this to be the most difficult transaction ever. You go do a walkthrough. It's not broom clean. Well, you can't be taken advantage of. Let's get the attorneys involved. Let's make this that's a terrible. Is that potentially coming because the DOJ wants that?
No. So here's the thing. The Department of Justice, they'll certainly be able to weigh in on our settlement agreement with the plaintiffs in the Missouri case. And this is a nationwide settlement. And so all the copycat cases, if this is approved by the court in the 8th District, the copycat suits go away. So the Department of Justice will weigh in, and then it'll be up to the judge to either accept what they say or reject it. But the judge is under no legal obligation to accept what the Department of Justice says.
Okay. And then what happens with those copycat suits? Like, there has to be a point of why there was a settlement. Do those copycat suits prolong? Do they go away? Like, what happens with all of those copycat suits? Because I think that's a lot of people's fear. It's like, okay, we just did this, but now what?
Yeah. So the copycat suits, there's different plaintiff groups. So the plaintiffs would all on the sell side would all be put into the national settlement. Their attorneys, they might object. They might say, hey, we've got a good case, whatever. They could object to the court. But at the end of the day, they and their clients will be able to get some have access to the money that's being collected in this settlement.
So they almost get pooled in so that it's not like just one thing after another after another.
Yep.
And
this is supposed to resolve not only the federal cases, but there's some state antitrust cases that were filed. Florida in particular is one of them. I know there's another state, but in theory, this will resolve all of them.
We're hoping that this gives us the ability to just like, okay, move on. Let's find out the new rules and move on. And if this is a simple answer, meaning it's just a money grab, why were brokerages over $2 billion in sales volume excluded? Are you allowed to say, or is it like
you said it? I mean, the plaintiff's attorney looked and said,
money grab.
Where else is there money for us to get? And just yesterday, the announcement about Compass settling, and so that's another 57 million added to the pool of funds for the plaintiffs. And the plaintiff's attorney will be getting more than you said at the opening of this.
I know. I've seen. By the way, I saw upwards of much more than that. I just didn't want to be exactly.
And so it's a money grab.
It's a money grab. Let's just move on. It's a money grab. It's absolutely, these people have money. We can go after them.
In theory, and that's the thing is that one of the things that the plaintiff's attorney didn't want to hear during the settlement is how razor thin the margins are for brokerages. Right. And so
I said it forever. Brokerages aren't even that profitable. It's teams that are profitable. Brokerages is not the profitable model right now, but it sounds like they had you in a position where, okay, we're going to exclude these people. And then people go, well, why didn't NAR protect them? Why didn't they, whatever? But then the flip side is, well, then they're not going to settle. They're not going to agree to a settlement. And now you guys have to file bankruptcy. And it's like,
So the good news on the settlement for those brokerages is their agents, their members. If they're members of the National Association of Realtors, they are protected. And here's the thing: we were able to negotiate in two different pieces. One is strictly a math formula that brokers can say, okay, we accept that, or non-binding mediation. And what we're finding is that the plaintiffs and their attorneys are settling for a fraction of what the formula was, just to be able to get whatever money they can. But here's the other thing is the brokerages don't need to pay the formula. They don't need to mediate. They can say, we'll settle outside that, or if we're not sued, maybe we won't do anything. So there are options. Again, not great options, but there are options.
I was going to say, a lot of these people are clients of mine. I've been on the phone with them and doing calls with them, and they're not happy, but it's just kind of like, and my message to them is very much what I just said to you, which is I have a feeling that NAR didn't have a choice, that there's not going to be a settlement if those people are not excluded. And we'll move on, but I get it, man. That's kind of what I was thinking. It's a money grab. At the end of the day, it's a money grab.
Yeah. And all I'll say just to finish on that topic, Jared, is if we appealed, those brokers would still be open, out there and liable. If we declared bankruptcy, they still would have been a target. And so
there's no good option. That's what you're saying. There's no good options.
All I can say is I'm sorry that's how the settlement came down, but that really is the best that we could do given the negotiating position we were in.
You had to cover the people that you felt like you could. Under the new proposed settlement, obviously compensation is not allowed to be listed on the MLS, but it does talk about the idea that concessions can be listed, such as what do you call it? Closing cost concessions, those kind of things.
Yeah,
is there some kind of a loophole where you can list concessions for compensation, or is compensation just completely off the? So
listen, what people need to be very careful about is not listing concessions that equal a percentage that a buyer broker might expect to receive. But concessions can be made for closing costs, for repairs, for whatever it is, and then the buyer can decide what they want to do with it. And if at the
in theory, you could have them, they were going to pay their closing costs, but you could have their closing costs conceded and then have them pay you there's ways around that.
Yeah, but it cannot be reflected in any way that it is compensation to be used for a buyer broker.
Gotcha. Do you anticipate places like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, other governing agencies making some kind of quick changes to their rules around the percentages that are allowed to be conceded, now that we know that buyer agency compensation may become more of a thing than it used to be, and we know that there's limits on what they allow, 3%, 6%, like whatever? Do you see that potentially happening or no?
So luckily, Fannie and Freddie already allow for independent party contributions, right? So that's already there. There is a percentage. I think a lot of us know what that percentage is. So that is okay. The big one that we're working on is VA, and unfortunately, when these rules, they took years and years and years to be implemented. We're having the conversations, but if there's any changes that are going to be made, the way government works, it's not going to be tomorrow. It's not going to be.
No, that's exactly
days.
why I asked, because
Yeah.
government is not known for.
But what I will tell you is that where buyer rep agreements are mandated, and I think there's 18 states across the country,
right.
VA buyers are still buying properties. And
well, was, by the way, that was my next question: was what happens with VA buyers who are not allowed to pay their compensation to their agent?
So this is what it is that if you have a VA buyer, what I'm being told, consult an attorney, please, is that then any offer that is made, the VA buyer is asking in the offer, we're allowed by law for their broker to be compensated.
Okay. All right.
Write it into the offer.
Two really quick questions here, because I know you've got things you've got to get to as well. Number one,
I've got a few more minutes.
I know. I like to be respectful. Like I said, I really appreciate you doing this, man. So I just want to be respectful of your time, and I've got empathy. I share and I understand the members like rage over this, but I also have empathy for you as a person, because I know it's not your personal, fault. You kind of took over being president at this time, but you've always been a stand-up guy and a class guy, and you're up there taking the lumps and having to answer questions you don't want to answer, and so I do appreciate that, and I want to respect that, and I know what
Jared,
it's like.
Jared, I know you said you have two questions. Let me just say something before you ask the final two questions. Listen, one of the things you may or may not know this about me, Jared. I used to be a diver, and so I dove in high school. I dove in college. I then also in the summertime, for a couple of summers, dove in a stunt and high dive show. And so I used to do a high dive from 75 feet. You used to get lit on fire and paid for it. I would do a fire dive. What I'll tell you is you never quite prepared for the first time you get lit on fire. But what that taught me was not to panic. Okay. And so if there's anything that I can convey to your audience here, is that I'm doing the best I can to have a steady hand on the wheel of our association, steering the association, and trying not to panic. Because when people panic, they make rash decisions. When rash decisions are made, you typically have rash consequences. Yeah. So I'm doing my best to be calm, level-headed, despite all of the other things that are going on. And so I just want to let you know, I used to get lit on fire and paid for it. So here you go.
That's insane. Honestly, man, like I'm going to ask you these questions, and once we do let you go and you go hang out with your family, I'm going to take 5-10 minutes for the rest of the audience here and just kind of do a little training with them as far as like things we can do, things we can say. But I honestly do believe, while I don't agree, again, it's the best of bad choices. Nobody wanted those changes. Nobody wanted those things. But I do believe that these are divisible changes, meaning that there is going to be a clear distinction now between pros and amateurs and people who understand how to talk to people, the actual skill market that we're in now, understanding that you're going to communicate to people. Less than 10% of people who hired a buyer agent got it to find a home. Finding a home is the easy part. The difference between having a buying agent, a professional buying agent, and not having one is the difference between finding a home and getting a home. Those are two completely different things. Okay. And so we'll my side of this business, we'll train people, we'll teach people what they should be saying, what they should be doing. But in the meantime, do you think that this settlement is good for some of the portals like homes.com, Zillow, realtor.com, because they're allowed to show compensation, and that people might start to filter over and say, well, let's just look here. Do you think this ends up being a good thing for them? Do you think it doesn't matter? What's your personal opinion on that?
I think it's a little too early to tell. At the end of the day, for everything else, humans are creatures of habit, right? So I think that the MLSs, they're going to have to adapt a little bit, but we're used to what we're used to. And so I think that the MLSs will still be the central gathering place for the information, because the system's already set up to send it out to the portals. One thing, and I want to say this: any company that receives an IDX feed, they can put on their company website if they're offering compensation on their own listings. That is something that was part of the settlement agreement. So Sears Real Estate, if we have listings, we pull in the IDX feed, and then we can put a field in there saying we are offering buyer broker compensation. So that is something where, it's going to force us to pick up the phone, call the other agent, send a text, send an email, find out the information. But we'll navigate. We'll figure it out. If there's one thing I know about realtors is they know how to adapt.
Yeah. Yeah, I run a company, one of my tech company I run called First Up, FYRSTUP, and essentially it digitalizes the traditional whiteboard. What we do is we communicate within brokerage pre-market listings in a compliant manner. And it's a huge advantage now because when you talk about buyer agency and being able to prove buyer agency and why you're worth it, the idea that now a brokerage is able to offer to their agents, the agents can now go to buyers and say, in addition to working hard, having access to the MLS, we have a proprietary list of sellers nobody has access to in a completely compliant manner. Huge thing. Number one thing we were asked for this past week, can you add a buyer compensation field onto First Up? And so that's already been added. It's happening, but it's the number one thing because that's why I asked the question about the portals, because people are now looking, going, where do we see this? Like, where do we, whatever. Last question, because again, I want to be good with your time here. NAR came out and they said that, they're paying, what is it, 418 million? Which number is it? 418 million over 4 years. And they've said there will be no price increases in 2024. So this is paid over 4 years. Are we anticipating
what I'll tell
price?
You, yeah,
what's that?
What I'll tell you is, so within 30 days of preliminary approval, NAR will pay $5 million into the pool. From that, those postcards that we've all seen are going to be sent out to the class members. Within 90 days of final approval, NAR will have to pay an additional $197 million. So that'll be 202 up front. And then on the anniversary of the payment of the 197, for 3 years after that, we'll be paying $72 million. And what I'll tell you is 2024, there's no dues increase. 2025, there's no dues increase.
Okay.
So the leadership team is meeting with the finance committee. We've got some outside consultants. We're going to go through, figure out how we'll be able to not only meet that financial obligation, but be able to continue to provide the tools, products, services, and advocacy that the members have come to expect. We might have to streamline some things. That is the thing. But at the end of the day, if this settlement is approved, we'll be a little leaner, probably a little meaner, but we'll still be there. We'll come out of this, and I think down the road we will be stronger for it.
Awesome. I appreciate that, man, and I can't state this enough. I know you haven't done a ton of these, so I appreciate you coming on here. We got thousands and thousands of people on here. You're probably going to get a ton of response and those things, but I think it's important to have these kind of conversations. And even if we don't love the answer, to know what the answer is. And I think that's a really important point that comes from this, that some people need to understand, is that, it's the best of not great options. And that it's not like NAR sitting here going, we're going to screw you and we're going to whatever. You've got these attorneys that are up for a money grab, litigating and kind of putting you in a position where you don't really have a lot of choices. You're talking about billions, not millions, billions. And so I so appreciate you, man. For everybody on here, I'm going to have you hang on. I've got a big announcement to make, and then I'm going to talk about a little bit of training side of as far as what I think this means and what the words you need to be using and that kind of stuff. Kevin, is there any final words that you want? Are you good? Or is there anything final you want to say to everybody? Or
I just want to say thank you to you, Jared. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to the members for tuning in. Things are going to change. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to, we will adapt. We will embrace this change. And anytime we have the opportunity to have additional conversations with the consumer, I think that's a good thing. And I think some of these changes are going to force us to have those conversations. But Jared, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. Take care.
Kevin, you're the man. Hey, enjoy having a little bit of family time today, man. I know it's been a rough go lately. So enjoy the time, man. I appreciate you. And I'm sure I'll see you soon.
All right. Take care.
See you, brother. All right, guys. So I've got a couple of announcements to make here, and we're going to talk about what we just talked about there and what I think is the win here and where I see this going. Okay. And so hang on here with me for a second. But first, I'm going to make a bit of an announcement. I know a lot of you have been asking lately about the next advance because we're moving where it's at. So let me just pull this up for you guys real quick here. We are doing, and by the way, my God, such a time as this, the next advance, here we go. It's going to be September 19th and 20th in Orlando, Florida, okay? And my God, is this ever more necessary? Like, you want to talk about a pros market? Now is the time where you're going to see a division in this market between those that win and those that don't win. Right now, and this is the only time you're going to see this, tickets to the advance, 2 days, 2 full days, are only $199. Guys, that's super cheap. That's not going to last. So you want to make it in this industry, especially with all the changes that are happening, you need to develop, invest in self-development. So just go to jaredjamestoday.com/advance. That's going to be there for you guys. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Just kind of figured I'd get that out to you since we've got you here for episode 100. Because like I said, it's more necessary than ever. I think that we need to understand right now that what's happening right now, we have a parallel industry that did this, and that's commercial, okay, where you don't have, compensation on an MLS or anything like that. And what you see in commercial is you see less agents, and I think we're going to have less agents, but you see agents that are dominant that do the majority of the business. And I think that's going to happen as well. I talked about how this is really divisible change. There's really not that much change in the sense that business is still happening like it's happening. You heard him. Listing agreements can pretty much stay the same because it's not the seller paying the buyer. It's the seller paying the listing agent. We need that message to get out there because that is not what you guys have been hearing lately. But buyer agency is now necessary, right? You guys heard me say before that we need to start to learn the language. And I've said forever, from a skills standpoint, the quality of your answers comes from the quality of the questions you ask. The words we use, the level of the pro we are is going to determine how well we do moving forward. You can't run around and act like an amateur and then expect to get paid like a pro. So this is going to get rid of some hobbyists, and that's a good thing. This is going to get rid of people who just watch HGTV and think that all you do in real estate is gossip, buy fake boobs and drive fancy cars and do everything but sell homes. This is gonna differentiate if you train yourself, if you get yourself ready, okay? And I used that line earlier, and I said, hey, the difference between having a great buyer agent is the difference between finding a property and getting a property. It's just like we used to say with listing agents. Do you want to list the house or sell the house? Those are two completely different things. And there's going to be a clear delineation between those two. But I want to say this. We've got a lot of scripts and dialogues coming out around how do you talk to buyer agents? What do you say to them? Just like you do a listing presentation. I'll be releasing those real soon to you guys. We've already started releasing them to some of our private clients. But I want to say this. This is a very important point. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking about the changes and everything that's happening. And I'll be honest, I don't agree with a lot of the changes. But it doesn't matter if I agree with the changes or not. They're happening. The chessboard is changing, right? And I started thinking back to the 2000s. You guys remember Tiger Woods before the womanizer days, but like when he was dominating golf. And when Tiger Woods was dominating golf, he was dominating so much that the PGA Tour came in and said, we've got to tiger-proof these courses. He's winning too much. And they started lengthening the courses. They started extending and expanding the dirt, what do you call it? The dirt areas. I forget what they're called right now. And they started trying to make it more difficult to tiger-proof the courses. But do you know what the result of tiger-proofing those courses was? He won more. Why? Because it made it more difficult for those that couldn't hit it as far, that didn't have the skill he had, that weren't as precise as him. And I'm telling you, that is what's happening in our industry right now. We don't have to agree with it, but our industry is being tiger-proofed, and they are tiger-proofing the courses. And those that are prepared, those that are skillful, those that are pros and not amateurs, I'm telling you that you are going to win more than you did before. And while you don't have to agree with the changes, that's what's going to happen. I put out a thing on Instagram the other day, and it's so true, and I just believe it, guys. And that is, you, great agents, will not be eliminated from this industry because of change. But you will be eliminated because of your inability to pivot and adjust to that change. And so we don't have to agree with that change, but we have to pivot and adjust to that change. I have been saying for years, what happened with Netflix and Blockbuster? People didn't stop watching videos, right? But how they did it changed. And for years, I've gone all over the world telling agents, people are going to keep using agents, but how they do it is going to change. And then when that moment comes and everybody realizes, holy crap, that's actually the truth, some of you panic, and then some of you go, hey, this is the day that I've been waiting for, because I will not be eliminated because of change. I'll be eliminated because of my inability to adapt or adjust to that change. And now more than ever, guys, you need to go in on development, self-development, on running a business, on your skill set, on the words you use, because ultimately that is what is going to separate you between the pros and the amateurs. Again, for years I've said, difference between a pro and an amateur. Amateurs practice enough to get something right. Pros practice so much they can't get it wrong. They don't even know how. And so the days and the years of just winging it and just let's just go make an offer and let's just see, our industry is becoming a pros market. And you have to decide if you're a pro. And you don't just decide you're a pro and say you're a pro. It's what you do. It's the preparation you put in. It's the training that you put in. It's the coaching that you put in. That is what's going to make you a pro, okay? So I appreciate you all being on. I've still got the link right there. I hope I'm going to see a lot of you in Orlando. First time we've announced that, September 19th and 20th in Orlando. This is probably the most important advance we've ever done. And I say that with clear conviction. This is the most important Jared James advance we've ever done, because this is going to really separate who's going to dominate the market, who's going to look back on this industry and remember the day that it changed, but for them, it changed for the good, and who was eliminated because they were just in for the quick grab. So I hope I'll see you in Orlando, September 19th and 20th, Jared James Advance. Get your tickets now. Prices are going to go up real soon here. We're going to make one more announcement, and then prices are going to go up. Get your colleagues there, guys. Now is the time to invest in yourself and stop winging it in this industry. I want to say one more time, thank you to Kevin Sears for being the podcast guest for episode 100. Can't believe we've done 100 episodes of Today with Jared James. We've got more episodes coming out, guys. I appreciate all of you for being on here. As I said, do me a favor, hit that share button. Make sure you let us know where you're from. Let's get this out to as many colleagues as possible. It's impossible for me to ask every single question that you guys want asked, especially in the amount of time that we had. But I think that we got some important things that people were wondering about. We answered some questions that there was not a lot of clarity on. And so I think that was a good thing. And I appreciate Kevin for being on. Okay. Just like I appreciate Kevin being on, I appreciate you guys being on. Love you guys to death. As always, make sure you're connected, guys. Connectwithjared.com. Ton of free content coming out on all the platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all these different places. Love you guys to death, and I'm committed to helping you guys now more than ever have the success that you deserve for yourself, for your families, for those of you, for those that rely on you. That's my commitment to you guys, okay? So love you guys to death. I'll see you in person soon. I'm off to some events coming up here in the next few weeks. But thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed, podcast, and otherwise, I'll see you guys soon. Love you guys.